Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on this gorgeous Porsche 911 992 generation Sport Classic. It's yet another unobtainable Porsche for Joe Bloggs. They retailed at £214,000. This particular car has a couple of options on it, like the Burmeister sound system and the surround view camera, bringing it up to a total of around £218,000. But as with so many special 911s, if you are lucky enough to own one of these, well, they've almost doubled overnight. I've seen a couple for sale online for £370,000, £380,000, and they aren't speculators either, because one went on collecting cars the other day for £335,000. Once you add the 25 odd grand commission fee on there, that particular buyer paid £360,000 for a very similar spec 992 Sport Classic. Porsche built 1,250 of these for the entire world. They wouldn't give me a specific number of how many units came to the UK, but I'm going to hazard a guess between 50 and 80 units. I feel very fortunate that I was thrown the keys to this by Porsche GB, and I've been driving it around and using it as my daily for the past 4 or 5 days. The Sport Classic is available in 4 different colours. This particular press car is Sport Grey Metallic. It's also available in black, in Gentine Blue, and in Agate Grey. Aside from the gold Porsche 911 Sport Classic badges around the back, and the optional decals along the doors, the bonnet and the roof, other ways of spotting a Sport Classic are this beautiful ducktail. That harps back to the 1972 2.7 RS, and more recently the original Sport Classic that came out in 2009. Other telltale signs are these gorgeous 21 inch staggered Fuchs wheels. These are unique to the Sport Classic, and they actually have the center lock system that you find in cars like the GT3 and the GT3 RS. And behind those you'll find standard fit carbon ceramic brakes. This also has the turbo rear end, so the widest rear end, although it doesn't have the vents just in front of the rear wheels. It has a gorgeous carbon bonnet and double bubble carbon roof. All these small little discrete changes, and once you know they're there, it really does add up to a fantastic looking car. And that's before you jump inside and have a look at the very unique and stunning interior. I've already mentioned that it has the wide turbo body, but it also has the 911 turbo engine, which is a 3.7 litre flat 6 twin turbo. It has been detuned for the Sport Classic down to 550 horsepower and 600 newton meters of torque. And that is partly due to the fact that the Sport Classic is only available with a 7-speed manual gearbox, and it's rear-wheel drive, unlike the turbo, which is all-wheel drive. So that'll be interesting to see how all of that blends together. Porsche claim this will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.1 seconds and go into a top speed of 196 miles an hour. Let's jump in and have a look at this cabin. If you think the outside is special, you wait until you get inside. It is one of the most beautiful cabins I've ever seen. In fact, no, this is the nicest cabin I've ever had the pleasure of sitting in. It's just incredible. I mean, the base 992 cabin is lovely. It's pretty much spot on in terms of driving position, ergonomics, infotainment system. Everything's pretty good in the base car, but in this, it's just elevated to another level. The leather, the use of leather, it's absolutely everywhere you look. Steering column, air vents, dashboard, obviously, doors. You've got some aluminium, you've got some wood along here, which shouldn't work, but does work so well. You've got that beautiful 911 Sport Classic badge up there. You've got a green theme going on with the dials, both in front of me and the Sport Chrono. And then we've got this beautiful houndstooth cloth that runs down the centre of the seats and is in the door cards. And this one, as we talked about on the outside, has the optional Burmeister sound system and the speakers on the doors. I mean, I think that sound system's about £2,500 on top of the Bose system, which is standard with this car because it comes with a lot of standard equipment. But I think the £2,500 is well spent just in terms of the way the speakers look in the door cards. They are unbelievable. We have a lovely Alcantara headlining A-pillars. It's almost like a perforated Alcantara as well. It's not just regular Alcantara. The wheel they've kept nice and simple, thin rim, typically Porsche. We've got the drive mode down here. It's all very familiar. All the controls are extremely familiar, and the lovely Porsche manual gearbox. Although this is a 7-speed gearbox, and as you might know already, I didn't get on massively well with the one that was in the GTS, but now I've had this for just over 4 days, I've started to understand it and grow to like it, but we'll talk more about that once we get it out on the road. It does have its 992 faults, or fault, which is the cup holders. This centre cup holder in a manual car is completely useless. You can't, even if you've got a coffee or a smaller cup in there, it's completely useless in a manual car. So I hope that Porsche have rethought the cup holders for the 992.2. That one up there in the dash is okay, but again, that's a bit of a pain for the passenger if you have one. When they're getting in and out, it's very easy to knock your knees on there. But once again, it's the only thing I can really complain about in this interior. These standard 18-way sport seats are lovely and massively adjustable. I absolutely love it in here. Let's just fire it up so you can see all the dials come to life. I really, really like this car. I like it on the outside. I love it on the inside. Let's go and see what it's like to drive. Let's start with that 3.7 litre engine. It's been lifted straight out of the current Turbo and Turbo S. Two models that I'm actually yet to drive. I need to fix that. Maybe I should take the Turbo S up to Scotland in the middle of winter on some winter tyres. I think that sounds like a video waiting to happen. So it's the first time that I've tried this 3.7 lump, and I've heard lots about it. Obviously I've watched other reviews around this car, and I can't compare it to what the Turbo feels like because I haven't driven that car, but I can compare it to the 3 litre that are in the, let's say, lower Carrera models, even models like the mighty GTS that I had recently. And in the GTS, well, the 3 litre is tuned right up, but I have to say there is no comparison. There really isn't. This engine, honestly, the first time you put it into second gear and pick it up from about 3,000 RPM, oh my goodness gracious, it is so fast. It has so much pace, it has so much thrust. And in 5 days that I've had this, that hasn't become normal. I haven't got my head around just how fast its in-gear acceleration is. Just to put things into context, I've literally just handed back the mighty Audi R8 GT. That has 620 horsepower. I spent a week with that. I took it down to the Alps and back, did about 2,000 miles. So I was very, very accustomed to a very, very fast car. But when I got in this and I did that second gear, foot on the floor, it's just mind-bending. I mean, what must the Turbo S feel like? Because this is just honestly next level. Porsche's 7-speed manual gearbox. I wouldn't say it's their greatest ever invention. I've always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. It's improved since they first launched it in the 991 generation, but it's still far from perfect. I wish that this car had the brilliant 6-speed box in it that we find in cars like the current GT3 and GT4. Saying that, 7th gear is very, very handy on longer journeys on the motorway. When you're in 7th gear, you're sitting at just 1800 RPM at 70 miles an hour. What does that mean? Well, it means you get a lot of efficiency. You get low 30s, no worries whatsoever. And you don't need to worry about having to change down when you get to an incline on the motorway, or to keep up with traffic if it surges up to 75 or 80 miles an hour, because maximum torque in this car, which is 600 Newton meters, is available from just 2000 RPM. So I'm sitting here now at 50 miles an hour in 7th at 1400 RPM. I put my foot on the floor and there's 60. It has torque that far down. But where this box goes a little bit upside down for me is when you start coming back down the box. You've really got to think about where you're going. And I know I haven't got the best track record with manual cars, but I find it very easy to go into 3rd instead of 5th in this box. Although in the few days that I've had this car, I've certainly improved my shifting. And I think if you live with the 7-speed box, it would get better and better over time. But I don't think it's completely flawless. And I do think that the 6-speed box is still the better gearbox. And this engine, with all its torque and all its power, well, it only really needs 6 cogs. But that's just my personal opinion. And as I say, having that 7th cog on longer journeys is certainly going to play into your favour. What's its ride and handling like? Remember, we're on staggered 20 and 21 inch wheels with very low profile tyres. I wouldn't say its ride quality is better than, say, a base Carrera 911, but it's certainly better than that GTS I had recently, which just felt overly stiff for UK roads. So it flows along nicely. We have 2-way adaptive suspension, and 98% of the time I've had this car, I've had it backed off into the softer setting, because the only time I can imagine you'd need the harder setting is if you're on a beautiful Alpine pass, or if you take your Sport Classic onto a track day. So in terms of its actual ride quality, I would say it's pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's not too bad. What about handling? We know it's not going to be terrible because it's a 992 generation 911, but how does it compare to the others that I've tried? Well, firstly, you don't get that super trick double wishbone front suspension setup that you do get in cars like the current GT3. But we do have an awful lot of mechanical grip in this car. We've got 255 section front tyres and massive 315 section rears. So its potential is really, really high, but I wouldn't say it's oozing with feel. I've certainly driven better 992s if it's driver dynamics and driver involvement that you're after, like the GT3, and even, I would say, arguably the base Carrera gives you a little bit more feel, a little bit more feedback. This car feels extremely planted. It has massive capabilities, but it's not talking to me all the time. To me, it feels more like a very capable GT car. And I don't mean Porsche GT, GT3, etc. I mean the traditional Grand Tourer. It feels like it does that very well, and really, I guess that's kind of what you want your Sport Classic to be. You're not buying this car to take it out on track. You're probably not buying it to drive at 10 tenths. You're buying it because you want a nice and pleasant driving experience, and that is exactly what this gives you. It kind of combines so many things in one package. Is it worth the 215 odd thousand pounds that Porsche want to charge you? Absolutely. Especially when you bear in mind a base Carrera without any options is about £100,000 these days. There is so much going on the outside and on the inside of this car. It has so many expensive ingredients, like the bonnet, like the roof, like that 3.7 litre sitting in its bum. It is such a magical package, and I think, as with so many premium exotic cars, if you've got the money, then it's certainly worth it. And in fact, the fact that these are now retailing or changing hands at nearly twice that, 370,000 pounds, well, that tells you that it's definitely worth it, especially as it's produced in such low numbers. It's always going to be a safe investment. Is this my new favourite 911 of the current lineup? I don't think it is, you know. It's brilliant. It's a very special package, and if I won the lottery tomorrow, it'd have to be a big win, and I don't play, by the way, then I would certainly add a sport classic to my 15 car garage. But if I could have just one 992, it would still be the brilliant GT3 Touring. And that would be very closely followed by the base Carrera. You hopefully know how much I love that car. It has just the right ingredients for a fast sports road car, and I think that's what's so important. If you want a track car, then go with the GT3 or the GT3 RS. If you want a fun, fast, capable road car, I really think the base Carrera is the best. This, yes, it's quicker, yes, it's more capable, but do you need that ridiculous pace on the road? No, not unless you want to lose your license very, very quickly. Obviously, it's always nice to have excess and reserve power and torque there, and I think if you could afford one of these, then yeah, why not? But in terms of value for money, the base car is really, really hard to beat. Although if you ask me in a couple of hours time, I might have changed my mind, and that's because I'm just about to drop this car back at Porsche GB, and I'm grabbing the keys to the 992 Carrera T, and by all accounts, that car and that model is the absolute cream of the crop. So I'm very excited about trying that, and please keep an eye out for that video coming very soon. I've only got it for a couple of days and the weather's not looking perfect, but I will of course film something, and I'm keen to see whether the T magic has rubbed off on the base car. Thanks a lot for watching. As always, stay tuned for more content coming very soon. Subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you at another one very, very soon. Cheers.